Have you ever tried to make a big change in your life only to find yourself right back where you started a few weeks later? Yeah, we've all been there. But what if the secret to real, lasting change wasn't about some massive, heroic effort, but about something microscopic? Today, we're diving into the core ideas of James Clear's Atomic Habits to see how tiny, almost invisible actions can lead to some truly remarkable results. This quote really gets to the heart of the whole idea. The San Antonio Spurs, one of the most successful basketball teams ever, actually have this quote hanging in their locker room. It's this powerful reminder that those big breakthrough moments we see, they're never about that one final action. Nope, they're the result of all the quiet, consistent work that came before. So let's kick things off with the first huge idea. The surprising power of getting just 1% better every single day. I know, it sounds so small, right? Almost insignificant. But the way it compounds over time, well, that's where the real magic is. We tend to think that progress should be a straight line. You put in the work, you see steady results. But that's just not how it works. In reality, the most powerful outcomes are often delayed. You can be working and working for a long time and feel like you're just stuck, going absolutely nowhere. James Clear has this amazing analogy for this. Think of your habits like tectonic plates deep underground. For years, they're grinding against each other, building up this immense, totally unseen pressure. And then one day, seemingly out of nowhere, one little shift triggers a massive earthquake. That breakthrough didn't just happen, it was the inevitable result of all that pressure building up for so long. And check out this real-world example of how a tiny starting advantage can lead to huge differences down the road. Because Eurasia is oriented east to west, crops and farming innovations could spread across similar climates 2 or 3 times faster than they could in the Americas, which run north to south. That one little geographical edge, compounded over thousands of years, led to completely different paths of development. Now that's the power of 1%. Okay, so if these tiny habits are so incredibly powerful, why is it so hard to build them sometimes? Well, to figure that out, we've got to look at what's actually going on inside our brains. Let's get into the science of it all. So, get this incredible story. A paramedic is at a family get-together. She takes one look at her father-in-law, who feels totally fine by the way, and says to him, "You need to go to the hospital, right now." The wild part is, she couldn't even explain what it was she saw. There wasn't one big obvious symptom, but her brain, after years and years of seeing patients, had learned to recognize a super subtle pattern in the blood flow in his face that signaled a major artery was blocked. That intuition, that habit of recognition, literally saved his life. What she was experiencing is the result of something called automaticity. See, our brains are basically pattern detection machines, and when we repeat an action enough times, the brain just automates it. It does this to free up precious mental energy for other stuff. And that right there is the ultimate goal of any habit, to get to a point where you can do it without even thinking about it. So how does the brain decide what to put on autopilot? Well, it follows a pretty simple rule, discovered by a psychologist named Edward Thorndike. He found that any behavior that's followed by a satisfying feeling tends to get repeated. He did these experiments with cats in puzzle boxes, and he saw they got way faster at escaping once they knew a tasty reward was waiting for them. This is all powered by what's called a dopamine-driven feedback loop. Just the anticipation of a reward, whether it's that great feeling after a workout or the comfort of your favorite junk food, releases dopamine in our brains. And that little chemical hit basically tells your brain, hey, that was good, remember this, and let's do it again. This exact same loop is what drives both our best habits and our worst. Okay, so that's the science. Now let's get to the really practical stuff. How do we actually use this knowledge to build better habits? It all boils down to 4 simple laws. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. So the first law is make it obvious, which is really about designing your environment to nudge you in the right direction. But the second law, make it attractive, is all about boosting your motivation. And one of the most brilliant ways to do this is a strategy called temptation bundling. You're basically linking something you should do with something you already want to do. And this might be the perfect example. An engineering student named Ronan Byrne loved watching Netflix, but knew he should exercise more. So what did he do? He hacked his stationary bike so it would only power his TV if he was pedaling at a certain speed. If he slowed down, the show would pause. He didn't have to invent new motivation. He just cleverly tied the motivation he already had for Netflix to his workout. Alright, on to the third law. Make it easy. Think of it this way. Trying to force yourself to do a difficult habit is like trying to blast water through a kinked garden hose. It takes a ton of effort and just creates tension. It's so much more effective to just unkink the hose. In other words, reduce the friction so the good habit can just flow naturally. And for our fourth law, make it satisfying, you have to give yourself some kind of immediate reward. There's this great story about a young stockbroker who started every morning with 2 jars. One had 120 paper clips, the other was empty. Every time he made a sales call, he'd move 1 paper clip from the full jar to the empty one, and he wouldn't stop for the day until all 120 clips were moved. That small physical act of moving a paperclip was just a tiny, satisfying signal of progress that kept him going, and it eventually made him incredibly successful. Now here's what's so elegant about this whole framework. You don't need a totally new set of rules to break your bad habits. You just take these 4 laws and you flip them right on their head. It's that simple. To break a bad habit, you want to make the cue invisible, you want to make the craving unattractive, you want to make the action itself difficult, and you want to make the reward unsatisfying. Each law just gets inverted. The key idea here is friction. If you want to drink less beer, don't just count on willpower. Hide it in the back of the crisper drawer so you're not constantly seeing it. Want to spend less time on social media? Just delete the apps from your phone. That little bit of extra effort it takes to go re-download it is often just enough friction to stop you from mindlessly scrolling. And all of this brings us right back to where we started. All these little strategies, all these tiny changes, they all rely on one absolutely crucial ingredient: patience. Mastery isn't some big event, it's a slow, steady process. Just like the philosopher George H. Lewis wrote way back in 1860, it's the repetition that carves out the pathways in our brain. It's not really about how much time has passed, it's about the number of reps you've put in. Every single repetition makes that pathway a little bit smoother until eventually the habit becomes totally automatic. When it comes right down to it, our entire lives are shaped by these tiny, decisive moments. That little choice to cook dinner instead of ordering takeout, the choice to put on your running shoes instead of grabbing the TV remote. Each one of these is like a tiny fork in the road, and as you can see, those small choices, they add up, and they lead to very, very different destinations over time. So, the real takeaway from all this isn't that you need to go out and completely overhaul your life tomorrow. It's much simpler. It's just to ask yourself this one question: what is one tiny choice, 1% improvement that you can make today that your future self will be grateful for?